Welcome into a brand new Tuesday edition of the Desmond Johnson Show here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, joined by my bi-weekly co-host, David Glenn from the North Carolina Sports Network. We got a lot to get into. If you are a sports fan, you've probably made a comment or something about it by now. ESPN is out here buying everything. We'll explain why they're buying it, what it means for you, the sports fan, going forward. And they're not the only ones. Paramount Plus actually announced something yesterday that's very interesting that we'll get into a little bit as well. The NCAA AP college football preseason poll is out. We'll talk about that. Only two teams from the ACC making the entire top 25. Do either one of those teams have a shot to make the college football playoff? We'll get into that also. And we'll take a little look at the Panthers. Panthers taking on the Browns. If you didn't know any better, it was Shedeur Sanders playing against himself. If you listen to the national media, there's no mention of the Panthers whatsoever, but that's why you have us here. We'll talk about what we saw during the Panthers versus the Browns on Friday night. And Mr. Bryce Young and company as the first string came out there for the first couple of plays. This is the Desmond Johnson Show. It's Sports Buffet with DG. Let's go ahead and get into it. Let's go ahead and roll that intro.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city needs that. I've been number one, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you won't and get your weed whack. I'm going harder than a martyr on the starter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's 4th and inches, I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
And welcome in again to the Desmond Johnson Show, brought to you by Emergency Responders Credit Union in Winston-Salem. There for all of your financial needs. If you are an emergency responder, not just in Winston-Salem, but anywhere in the state of North Carolina, ERCU can help you. My original banner did not say Sports Buffet with David Glenn. It said Tuesday, Sports Network's David Glenn and WRAL's Chris Lee. And joining us is Chris Lee from WRAL and Panthers Playbook. What's going on, Chris? How you doing, man?
I'm good. Sorry I'm late, man. When you have a 2-year-old, they start messing with stuff. And so my mics were unhooked and everything because she was just so, I guess, curious over here. So, yeah.
No worries.
My keys have gone missing recently, too. And it's because, well, she placed them somewhere.
Check the toilet. Check the toilet. They're probably in the toilet or the refrigerator.
They were in her stroller, actually. I don't know.
She just wanted to go.
She just wanted to go somewhere.
Just wanted to go somewhere. Yeah. So I'm gonna jump right into it because this was something I was actually saving. I was gonna talk about it last week, and I was like, you know what? Let me just wait till I get some legal minds on here and big sports guys on here. And DG, you're my legal analyst here when it comes to this kind of stuff. I wanted to jump off with ESPN buying the rights to WWE paid live events and NFL Network and Red Zone. For those that are living in a cave or did not realize this, over the past really 10 days, ESPN has been on a buying spree, buying content, and really longer than that because the Rich Eisen show, which is on Roku Network, is actually coming to ESPN also in a similar content licensing deal that Pat McAfee has with ESPN now. You're starting to see people like us getting approached by these larger media outlets to bring their platform or to bring their shows to their platforms to create content, which I guess makes it easier for the ESPNs of the world to push that content out there. ESPN is about to go direct to the consumer, which is something I've been waiting on for like a decade, where I literally have a Sling subscription. My Sling subscription is $60 a month, y'all. I only use it for ESPN and CNN so I can get live news whenever's going on. But really, it's for like ACC Network and stuff like that, so I can do all of this. I need a way to get to ESPN. ESPN has been married to the cable idea since its inception and just felt like it was never going to get away. Now ESPN is going to offer it where you can pay directly into ESPN, not Sling or YouTube TV or any of these other places where you have to get it before. You can get it directly from ESPN, and it's going to cost you $30 a month. But the thing I've been seeing online is people like WWE fans in particular, and Chris, you can speak to this, they're mad they're going to spend $30 a month on PLEs, where we remember back in the day, you paid $60 for each pay-per-view, to watch them, and nobody complained about it then. and you're getting all this other stuff with ESPN. David, I want to start with you first on this. Your thoughts on what ESPN is doing. And then, of course, we heard about Paramount Plus doing this with UFC, where we'll get into that in just a bit, where they're buying that content. That'll leave ESPN Plus and go to Paramount Plus exclusively in CBS. So now Paramount's going to have NFL, and they're going to have MLS, and they're going to have all the UFC is going to be on CBS and Paramount Plus now. What are your thoughts on this happening with ESPN and these big companies kind of snatching up these properties to prepare themselves for whatever the next level is going to be for viewers?
Yeah, I think the main thing to remember is that ESPN was born into a world where cable TV was just starting, right? ESPN was created in 1979, and it was the 1980s when I was a high school guy where cable TV exploded. And you went from over-the-air free TV to paying for whatever your cable provider was. And if you fast forward long enough, ESPN went from riding the wave of the growth of pay TV, where, you know, out of 120 million American TV households, there was a time that 100 million of them had either satellite or cable or some other form of pay TV. And ESPN was in those 100 million homes. Well, gradually, 100 million cable and pay TV homes became 90 million, became 80 million, became 70 million, and continued to slide. So ESPN needed to change its business model. And that's why you're seeing, you know, ESPN Plus was created years ago. And that was a way for consumers to get the product a little bit differently than the traditional ways. And now you're seeing ESPN try to upgrade their content with popular things like the NFL Network and Red Zone, et cetera, but also branching out in other ways from pay-per-view to any other way that you can think of where folks are consuming sports content. It's not just about live sports programming anymore, although that's fundamental to ESPN's business model. But this is just a reaction to the changing of the media universe. And we're all in it in one form or another. It's extremely complicated. And if you're as big as ESPN, you got to change with the times. And just like from the consumer point of view, remember the days where folks were saying, oh, I'm cutting my cable bill because I'm tired of paying $100 a month. Smart people were saying, dude, you're going to end up paying your $100 a month in other ways. You think you're a genius by unplugging from cable? Well, you start doing the math. If you have 3 streaming services plus ESPN Plus, maybe you dive into one of these direct-to-consumer things later this year, you're going to end up paying your $100 a month if you're a big consumer of sports and other entertainment programming. And it's just, in what form will that take? Just as the consumer is changing his and her preferences, big companies like ESPN have to change how they provide their content.
David Glenn from NC Sports Network and Chris Lee from WRAL joining me here on the Desmond Johnson Show, a Tuesday edition. Chris, I know you're a huge WWE fan. We've had you on multiple times talking about WWE events. What was your initial thought when you heard that ESPN was buying WWE premium live events and they would no longer be on Peacock?
Well, initially there was some excitement because to me it feels right to have, you know, the biggest pro wrestling events on ESPN. Then I was like, oh, wait a minute, am I going to have to pay an extra $30 a month for this? And it was cleared up pretty soon after that's not necessarily the case. If you already have a cable subscription via, you know, normal regular cable like Spectrum or whatever, or YouTube TV, and you have access to ESPN already, then you're going to be able to, through the new app, authenticate kind of like you do right now for ESPN Plus and ESPN3, things like that, ACC Network Extra. You can authenticate through your cable subscription to still watch everything, so you don't have to pay an additional $30 a month. So then it goes back to the excitement for me for that. I think it's a good move for WWE. To go into that direction because, you know, you talk about the worldwide leader in sports, and that's, I think, where you want to, you know, make sure your content is at. However, I will say that I think there's a certain magic that NBC and WWE have together that they've had for a long time since, Saturday Night's Main Event first began. back in the 80s. And there's something about NBC's presentation, even though they're not huge in the sports world, when they do sports, they do it big and they do it right. So, but I think there were also some issues, I guess, with the PLEs where, if you missed it, if it started at 8 o'clock and you came in at 9 o'clock, you can't rewind back to 8 o'clock to watch. And you have to literally wait until the whole thing was over to get back. So I'm wondering if ESPN will be the same, because that's kind of how ESPN Plus works right now. So we'll have to see, kind of if that fixes itself. I want to touch on the NFL part just a little bit, because I'm glad that the NFL Network was saved. I was worried that was going to go away. We've seen the NBA Network kind of become a shell of itself. Mm-hmm. And now, NFL Network is going to be saved. But with this deal also, the NFL has bought 10% of ESPN. So it feels like a state-owned media type of thing. And it makes me wonder, like, when we've had like serious NFL scandals or whatever of the past, ESPN has led the way in a lot of that coverage from a journalism standpoint. What's going to happen now if this kind of happens in the future, and now their daddies, the part of their owners, are going to be like, hey, and what's going to happen? It almost feels sports media is getting to this weird place, and I'm seeing it here on the local level where I'm at. I'm seeing it nationally, that if there isn't a direct financial I guess, way that somebody can benefit from a coverage of anything, they're pulling back from it, which is weird to me right now as a broadcast journalist, and putting more on the journalist part, because I'm seeing it also where I'm at. And it's this strange thing that's starting to happen now. And so I'm wondering what the landscape of what I do as a journalist is going to be in the next 10, 15 years. Because now, if, let's say, WWE, or not even WWE, but their parent company, TKO, if they start buying into some of these properties as well and getting a stake, now you're going to have these major organizations not only having the major distribution, but also owning parts of the major distribution that they're going to be in. And so therefore they can also control their messages a little bit more and still get over on people a little bit more, and maybe even get over on their fighters and their athletes there. Because there's still some issues with, you saw the money that UFC got. Are they going to pay their fighters?
You talk about TKO. Yeah. I mean, they're going to have the money to do something. They're going to have like $8 million over the next 7 years, because just a couple of days ago, they announced that they had reached an agreement with Paramount Plus and CBS to move all the UFC events. I think Dana White says it's going to be 4 big events throughout the year, and then the numbered shows that they do, I guess, like each month or whatnot. All of that's going to Paramount Plus and CBS. CBS will have some of those bigger pay-per-view events, and the numbered ones will be on Paramount Plus, which actually makes the most sense. And Paramount Plus is not raising their rate, so you're literally getting it's the end of the pay-per-view model, basically. UFC was really the last one where you had to, even on ESPN Plus, you had to pay to still watch it, and they're doing away with that by moving it to Paramount Plus. And Paramount Plus is paying out I think like $7 billion or something like that over 7 years or something nuts. And then between them, the WWE PLE deal, TKO is going to make like $8 billion over the next 6-7 years. So they're going to have money to do things with. And then this doesn't even talk about WWE moving SmackDown to Peacock. So they will still have WWE programming. It'll just be SmackDown. Raw is on Netflix. That was a huge $1 billion deal. So TKO has done a lot of stuff between WWE and the UFC merger to make money off of both of these companies.
And from my understanding, it's just the PLEs for WWE.
Right.
If I'm understanding it correctly, their archive is still going to be on Peacock.
Yep.
So eventually those PLEs will go back over to Peacock. And the rumblings I'm hearing, they have their relationship with TNA, that they're trying to slide TNA into this spot. There could be a TNA NXT PLE deal with Peacock, which is going to be very interesting, which is now WWE starting to control deals for other wrestling companies. Like, they're starting to show a little bit of that monopoly situation is going on. It's a very weird time right now. some interesting stuff is happening. It's very interesting if you look at the landscape.
And I like the way you brought that up, Chris, because like for me and DG in particular, who we worked in traditional media and then through whatever reasons had to go off and do our own thing. And we're seeing more and more folks doing that. Our buddy Joe Ovies and Joe Giglio, Ovies and Giglio, and OG Triangle Media. They're out there. I just did a panel at the NSMAs with Joe back in June where we were talking about this kind of thing. And it came up where I was like, the Pat McAfee model is kind of the model right now where you build up your audience big enough where one of these conglomerates and they want to get it. But instead of you just selling your show to them, you're licensing the content to them, so you still own the show. So Pat McAfee's deal is so different where he's on for 3 hours every day. Those first 2 hours are on ESPN. That last hour is only on his YouTube channel, and it's like exclusive to his YouTube channel and his diehard fans. But he has over 1 million subscribers on his thing, so he's getting it from all over the place. DG, I wanted to ask you this question regarding the NFL Network and Red Zone. I just saw something before we came on here that there's one person that might kind of screw up this whole deal in terms of NFL Network and Red Zone coming in, and that's the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, who may stick his nose in this and do whatever. Has to do something with back in the day he wanted to buy the Buffalo Bills or something like a decade or so ago. The owners kind of revolted against it. He told Stephen A. Smith that if they didn't let him do it, he's going to run for president. Here we are in 2025, all that's come true, and there's a resentment between the president and the NFL where he may look at it as if, this is too much. We're not doing this, or I'm not going to let you do this, or whatever it may be. Do you think that there's anything that's going to stop this legally from happening, whether it's the president or whoever, in terms of ESPN being able to buy into NFL Network in exchange them getting a ownership stake or whatever?
Well, I can tell you as a longtime attorney that most of the legal rules that have been in place during our lifetime are either out the window entirely under the current president of the United States or on the margins. I mean, he is just as transactional a human being as I have ever encountered in major political office. And by transactional, I mean, there's no value in fairness. There's no value in relationships. There's no value in some of the typical things that most of us as human beings value in addition to money. The current president is all about the bottom line. He wants to increase his power. He wants to increase his money. He wants to increase his influence. He wants to increase his votes. And he doesn't really care who gets squashed when somebody crosses him. And that makes this stuff unpredictable. I mean, the Constitution of the United States has been pretty steady for most of my lifetime, and it's in jeopardy because of the current president of the United States and his lawless, reckless attitude toward the rule of law and the United States Constitution, which most of the time he shows that he doesn't even understand. So whatever antitrust law actually is, you could in the past predict whether a merger would be approved by, the Federal Trade Commission or some other government body. All of those rules that have been placed, since I became an attorney in the early 1990s, they're all harder to predict now, because the current president is just a more volatile, more lawless person who acts much more on emotion and personal vendettas. Like, I'll get that league because they did that to me
That's what I'm worried
ago.
about. Yeah. I'm worried about that.
That makes all this more dangerous, less predictable. Some find it entertaining. I find it alarming.
And I don't think the WWE stuff would be effective. Lyndon McMahon's in his administration, so I don't even think that's not going to be, and that's kind of what we're talking about. He won't worry about that, but he might worry about this because the NFL shunned him a decade ago and he still holds that vendetta. So we'll find out for sure on that. Go ahead.
I have a question I would like to ask David just about this, if possible.
Sure.
When it comes down to that, though, the NFL is technically a nonprofit organization. So if he takes that down, he's going to have to take down mega churches along with it, right?
It's not that simple, because whereas that's a logical conclusion to you and me.
That's the base, though.
We're living in a world, guys.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if
look at it this way, we're living in a world where up is down and down is up. And what I mean by that is, as the president of the United States, you need to declare an actual emergency, for example, to have the federal government take over the policing of Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. There's no emergency in Washington, D.C. Violent crime is down by astounding numbers. But the current president lies about those numbers his most passionate followers have proven over the last 10 years, they'll believe every lie he tells them.
Mm-hmm.
And from a legal perspective, it's outrageous. It's ridiculous. It's unconstitutional. It's alarming. It's disgraceful, in my opinion. You can't just manufacture an emergency that's not there because some lawyer's telling you, yeah, you have to have an emergency to take over the policing of Washington, D.C. Well, there is no emergency. The current president will just line people up at his door until somebody in that line will say, well, here's what I see as an emergency. And they'll just make something up, even though crime is down. And that person will say it's an emergency. Then he'll go to a podium and say it's an emergency. Everybody knows it's not. But, the founding fathers created a three-pronged system for a lot of reasons, right? An alarmingly high percentage of Americans can't name the three branches of government.
That's been an alarming thing for me, that like no one paid attention to civics in high school, apparently, because people don't seem to know how the government works. So like some of us are sitting like, oh my gosh, you can't do this. And the rest of them are like, well, why can't you? It's like, because you can't.
And by the way, I'll give anybody credit. If they just say president instead of executive, I'll give them credit. If they just say, House and Senate instead of legislative, I'll give them credit. If they just say judge, I'll give them credit for judicial.
I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to turn this into a political show, but this thought it literally popped up on my thing right before we came on, that like he could pooch that deal with the NFL.
The reason it's relevant is that whereas Chris brings up a point that would have been logical for most of my 5+ decades on Earth, these things don't matter anymore. It does not matter that Chris Lee, an intelligent, informed person who's trying to be fair and apply things equally, just doesn't matter anymore. And wherever anybody is on the political spectrum, if they'd like to debate me on that issue, which is not even a political observation, it's just those things don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
I will give them the worst intellectual beating of their lives on that issue.
I feel like DG's
because
been
all
waiting
the
to get
evidence is on my side,
He's been
and I
asking
can't
somebody.
lose when all the evidence is on my side.
I feel like DG's been waiting for somebody to ask him to come into a political debate. So please, somebody ask him to do this.
You don't want to give me that podium, man. It's dangerous.
I'm going to shift gears because, again, I didn't mean to turn to a political thing, but everything's kind of getting like touched by this right now.
It's my fault too. I
wanted to know. Well, I had him on here. I wanted to know.
Hey, remember mergers of some of these giant media companies, that is under the regulation of the federal government.
Right.
And, influence and money matters and buys decisions that never would have been made in the past.
It'll come down to what do I get out of it? Like, if I'm going to let this go through, what do I get out of it? And that's really the ultimate of all of this, is really what it is. I want to shift over to Friday night. Again, if you've been watching national media, you would think it was Shedeur Sanders playing against like 11 test dummies or something out there. Like, they're just disrespecting the fact that they were playing the Carolina Panthers. I don't want to worry about Shedeur and the Cleveland Browns situation. They've already left town. I want you guys' thoughts on who stood out to you Friday night. Now, it's a preseason game, and I saw people like, oh, they should have tried for the win or whatever. I'm way past that. Like, it's preseason. I don't care about the win. You're playing the fourth and fifth stringers in the fourth quarter. There's no way to really even bet on the game because you don't even know who's playing in it. I'm looking at like the first string guys, in particular on offense, that were in, because half the defense didn't play first string on a Friday night. Like Derek Brown didn't play, J.C. Horn didn't play. So you really can't get a clear indication of that unit as a whole. For the most part, the offensive starters played 2 series. The first one was a 3-and-out. And of course, the second one, there was some good stuff in that second one. Chris, of course, your co-host with Dennis Cox for Panthers Playbook. Give me who popped the most to you on Friday? When you left Friday night, who was the player that you were like, oh, I didn't know. Yeah, okay, this is different. Okay, I like him. Like, who was that guy that kind of stood out to you?
Ironically enough, I was in Cleveland to watch that game, so I had to watch the Cleveland version of that broadcast. So it was very interesting because they didn't actually show the fight with Xavier Legette. I had to find out what that looked like later. So it was a very interesting view for me. I love the fact that Bryce looked like the same guy from the last 7 games of last season. And dare I say, he's starting to look a little bit like Drew Brees right now. And he's starting to, make things happen and become that guy that we thought he was. Now his wide receivers have to catch up. I thought that Teteroy McMillan Even though he, had 3 catches, I know he wish he would have had back. You can see where the improvement can come in. I want him to make these mistakes in his first preseason game. Like, hey, in the red zone, things are going to go a lot faster. You got to whip your head around a lot faster to get that catch. And I think he'll do that in the regular season. Thought the offense in general looked good. I would love to see Hunter Renfrow with the first group to see what all that looks like together. But it feels like if this core group can grow together and be something this season, I'm not too worried about it. Defensively, I think I was actually looking more on that side than anything else. And it felt as if the defensive ends were still in the I can't touch the quarterback mode, because, there's a couple times where maybe Princely Umanmielen and Turk Wharton should have had Shador, but it's fine. They got to him. What I saw was a defensive line that was getting more push than I remember them getting in the last few years. And that was without Derek Brown. So I'm excited to see what happens when Derek Brown is in. And also that defense was starting to look a lot like a 4-3 in that game. Very interesting to me.
I wasn't saying that, but yeah, I'm
a 4-3 with a nickel base. Honestly, like that's really what it was looking like.
But
it looked pretty good to me. Corey Thornton, I think looked really good and solidified his place on the team. Looks like he's a potential lockdown corner along with J.C. Horn that they can probably match up with some other receivers on the other end, which is what they needed. And I think in general, it wasn't a player or a side of the ball that stood out to me. What stood out to me, and I've been saying this on Panthers Playbook, is nobody's really talking about the consistent improvement that Dan Morgan has allowed this team to have. I don't remember, even back when the Panthers would do this alternate, we're good one year, we're bad the next year, good this year, bad the next year type of thing. I don't remember 2 back-to-back off seasons where I felt like the team got better.
The only one,
you know what I'm saying?
I would maybe 2013-14. That might be the only stretch where, because that last stretch, the offseason after 2014 into 2015, that's when they added like Peanut Tillman, Jared Allen, all these vets that wanted to come play. And that was after they had won a conference championship or the division championship at 7-8-1 or whatever. And then the 15-1 season. That's the only time I would probably say maybe that's 2003 to 05. Like that's right around the same kind of thing.
That's too long. And so, right now, like he's having, not only is he showing you like right now his, we've got to see what happens with Xavier Legette. We got to see if Jonathan Brooks ends up coming back or whatever. But he's drafting guys in the late rounds that end up sticking around and having a major role in his team. He's re-signing the right guys. He's getting the right free agents, and he's getting the right UDFAs to come in and also stick. Because if you get Corey Thornton to stick, and also Jalen Coker might end up becoming your wide receiver 3 or 2, like Dan Morgan is absolutely balling right now, and nobody's going to really like acknowledge it until the Panthers start winning, but he's balling right now. And this team was not an NFL roster just 2 years ago, and now it's looking so much better just him doing his moves.
It's crazy too, DG, as a turn over to you for your thoughts on who stood out to you, because me and Jonathan Stewart talked about this on Believe in Panthers last week, and we'll have a new episode later on today on Believe Podcast Networks. But the coaches that preceded Dave Canales, they actually came in with stuff to work with. Like, Matt Rule didn't come into an empty cupboard. He came into a team that had just been competing for the playoffs like a year or two prior. Like, he still had Christian McCaffrey. He still technically had Cam Newton. He still had, wide receivers and guys on defense. And he had stuff there. It wasn't really until the end of his regime into Frank Wright where they started dismantling the car a little bit. And it was never a full-blown we're rebuilding. It was always like we might rebuild, and then it would yank you back. They trade Christian McCaffrey off, like they're rebuilding, and then they go on a win streak and decide, you know what, let's just see what happens. And it pushes them back like half a year. And that's kind of what went down. This is the first time, to Chris's point, in a long time, probably since the Rivera era, where each year you feel like, okay, they got some stuff here. And this is, to Chris's point, the first time in a long time where I felt like, okay, they feel exponentially better than they did at this point last year, where either before we're just kind of plateauing and we don't know, or we've over exaggerated what we think is going to happen. What did you see Friday night? Who stood out to you in terms of, oh, that guy flashed, I didn't realize that he might be a contributor? Because Corey Thornton might be this year's Jalen Coker, the undrafted free agent that becomes a key part of the 53.
Yeah, I agree with Chris's general point just about the improving depth of the roster and the depth chart. I don't know how many more wins that is going to translate into in 2025, but having Jalen Coker, having a Jimmy Horn Jr., having the veteran Hunter Renfrow on the inbound to go with Adam Thielen and the 2 recent high draft picks at wide receiver, that's a deeper wide receiver room in an era where everybody's talking about how Bryce Young needs to be surrounded by more talent. That's a deeper wide receiver room than the Panthers have had in some time. And a couple of those guys looked good on Friday night. And as you said, Des, not a lot of defensive guys played a lot, but Corey Thornton definitely stood out to me. What's intriguing to me and is hard to predict, especially it's not an answer to your question about the opening preseason game because of how they handle playing time. But the best player on this team is Derek Brown, and he missed almost all last season with his injury. Another one of the best players on this team is J.C. Horn, who's already been to a Pro Bowl, and he had his preseason car accident, and he's been limited for physical reasons. I think another of the potentially best players on this team is Trayvon Merrick, the free agent safety that they got, who's like one of those chess pieces that allows you to blitz unpredictably from the safety position. I think he can be really good, although, again, we didn't see a ton of him in week 1. So it's going to have to be significant improvement on defense to go with the continuing evolution of Bryce Young. If the Panthers are going to go, everybody's still predicting them to finish in, say, the bottom third of the NFL this year. Remember, last year, almost everybody predicted them to be dead last in the NFL, and they were only a little bit better than that. So I think they could climb a few rungs, but does it look like a playoff team to me yet? Not really. I don't see as much star power, enough star power on both sides of the ball for that to happen.
I agree with you, DG. I do think they need probably one more offseason and draft, but I do think we will see improvement this year. I think they'll be closer to 500 than a lot of people don't think they will be. For me, it was Bryce Young. We've named all these other people, and Corey Thornton definitely stood out. He had a play where he blew up a running back in the backfield. There's something with Bryce. I don't know exactly. Well, I kind of do. When the switch went off last year, and that stretch at the end, the last third of the season, where when he came back in, it almost looked like everything was moving slower for him. And like he was starting to finally get it. And like before the first 2 games of last year, dude was just lost. Like I thought he was like a lost cause. Like we would not be able to put him back into a game. That's how lost he looked. So for him to get to there, still hold the convictions of the team and them rooting for him, and him to come back in and do the way he did, I felt like it was a carryover on Friday where that first series was 3 and out. I mean, that happens. The second series where, they got some help for some penalties, they were running some they were crispy. That's probably the best way I could put it. They felt crispy. Like it wasn't exactly vanilla. It was, but it wasn't exactly vanilla. They had some different schemes and things going on. He threw to multiple receivers, not just the same one. Tet McMillan showed out. The one play in particular to me that stood out the most was the incompletion in the end zone, where Tet had a guy on a route. Literally, Tet is juking to the left as Bryce is letting the ball go, and like he turns around, the ball is right here, and I jumped out of my seat when I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And Tet knew it too. As soon as it happened, he was that's what I want. To be able to have that kind of anticipation, we didn't have that at all last year. Like that negates having to create separation. If the wide receiver knows where the ball is going to be and the defender don't, it don't matter how separate you are. Like he can't defend it. So that kind of thing excited me. And then for them to actually score, I think the next play or play after, where it was kind of a broken play and Bryce has to bootleg out towards the right, and you can see him, like the play is broken down. He's directing Coker to, go to the left. He jukes his guy because he came from the whole other side of the field. Jukes his guy. He's wide open, touchdown. Stuff like that hasn't happened since Cam Newton was here. And like that makes me excited, but I'm also tempering it because every year in August, since since David Tepper got here, I've been like, oh yes, this is going to work. I love what they're doing. And then by the second week of September, I'm severely disappointed. And I feel embarrassed that I put myself out there like that. So I'm trying to hold back. But from what we're seeing, it feels like this is a little bit different than before. I got to get you guys out of here. But before you go, the AP Top 25 poll did come out this week. Texas is number 1 for the first time in school history. They are going to take on number 3 Ohio State at the Horseshoe. It's the first time I believe the number 1 ranked team in a preseason poll will open up as an underdog in their opening game against the defending national champs. My question, Clemson and Miami, Clemson comes in at number 4. I think Miami's at number 10. They're the only 2 ACC teams to make the top 25 poll. DG, we've talked about North Carolina and all the hype that they've had going into this season. Are you guys surprised North Carolina didn't make the back end of this top 25 just off of the hype? And can Clemson or Miami make the playoffs and actually get to at least the Final Four? DG, let's start off with you.
Yeah, I'm not surprised about the Tar Heels at all. As much as I respect Bill Belichick and his track record, as he said at the ACC kickoff event and even during preseason camp, 70 new players plus an almost entirely new coaching staff and support staff. That's a lot of new. That's a lot of turnover, as he said. For those who don't know, the typical turnover on an NFL roster from one year to the next is 25 or 30%. So that's some new every year for every team. When you have 70 new players in college football, that means roughly 2/3 of everybody. And if you add coaches, it's closer to 75% of everybody, maybe even 80%. Everybody is new, like your introductions from offense to defense, lineman to lineman, coach to player. That's a lot of new and a lot of turnover. So I think if Carolina, has a winning record and goes to a decent bowl, to me, that would be a significant accomplishment. If they somehow ended up in the top 25, I think that would be maybe the best first-year debut in the history of Carolina football for a head coach.
I think I saw the most wins a Carolina rookie head coach has had in his first season is like 8. I think
that's correct.
Yeah,
and believe it or not, it was John Bunting and Larry Fedora. So it wasn't even 2 of their legendary coaches that got to 8 in their first year. Even Mac Brown infamously had a 1-win season back at the end of the 1980s before he built that mini dynasty in the 90s. So, it is about Miami and first Clemson, also Miami, maybe an Louisville or an SMU or somebody else will jump in there. But, I think the ACC can have 2 playoff teams again this year, and I think there's 4 or 5 candidates to make that happen. I just don't think the Tar Heels are one of them.
Chris, one of the dark horses I'm looking at that could maybe slip into this by the end of the year based on how it kind of goes in the ACC is actually the Duke Blue Devils. They've recruited very well in North Carolina. I know a number of course, we do a lot of high school football here at Tobacco Road. I know a number of kids that are over there now, including my guy, Quayshawn Brown, the wide receiver. Have a huge year. Yeah, he's going to have a huge year this year, I think, with them. I always said he felt like a Sunday player whenever I was covering him at East Forsyth doing games over there, and hopefully he'll be able to do that. But Duke is starting to and I'm curious about NC State too. There's a lot of talent in the triad from here at NC State. Do you think Clemson or Miami can make the college football playoffs? And overall, in general, I think we talked about this before, DG, where preseason polls, I feel like they kind of mess up everything, where there's no way to really do this correctly. Like, they got Alabama in the top 10. They lost like 4 games last year. Like, they're there by name alone. Do you think Clemson or Miami can make the playoffs? Are you seeing somebody else in the ACC you think might be able to slip in? And can any of those teams get to the Final Four?
I think Clemson and Miami do have a possibility of doing it. I think, as with anything, this is a preseason, so we just got to see how it all shakes out. I do think it's a possibility for them, though. I'll be interested in seeing what Louisville does. I'd be interested in seeing what Duke potentially does with Darian Mensah at quarterback now, and seeing how he can kind of acclimate with this team. I think Duke's problem last year, and they were 9-4, and I've been to their camp last year they were saying that this year they're saying 9-4 from last year is their standard now. So they don't want to go under that. So they're looking at their minimum, want to get 9 wins, but they want to improve from that, and they feel like they can with the quarterback who is a dual threat now. Malik Murphy, I didn't know much about him coming into Duke. I thought his body type, to me, screamed dual threat. The guy couldn't move at all. He only really had the arm, and even then, he overshot guys a lot. Darian Mensah is a little bit more accurate, and he can move. So they feel like he's going to unlock something in their offense. Plus, they've added some good receivers from the portal, things like that. Even though they're missing some guys who graduated that they absolutely love to have. So some of these guys are still unproven commodities. But there's a chance that Duke goes up there and pushes it. I think I'm skeptical of any North Carolina team right now getting more than 9 wins. Because like any team in North Carolina getting 10 wins, what's happening? Throw a parade for them immediately. You know what I'm saying? Like I just, it's hard to believe that that's going to happen right now. We'll see where NC State shakes out. I think that they could, NC State and Carolina could at least get the 6 wins to become bowl teams. But I think next year is the year for North Carolina. Yeah, Wake, I just want to see what happens under a new head coach, honestly. Yeah. Like they could possibly do it, but new head coach, I'm not really putting too much expectations on.
And they can't use the previous model that they were using before, where they were basically stockpiling freshmen and redshirting them, so they had a lot of 5th-year seniors playing all the time.
Those guys are leaving.
Yeah, they were making it competitive, and then once NIL started and the transfer portal, that all kind of went away. And what I'm thinking, DG, Wake Forest is the smallest Division I school, are they not?
It is.
Yeah, yes, I believe they are in terms of undergrad enrollment. And real
4,300, I think. Yeah.
One of Chris's points. This is crazy, but so these schools have been playing college football for more than 100 years, right? Duke has had a 10 or more win season one time in the history of its football program. NC State, which has more history, at least more consistent history in our lifetimes. The Wolfpack has 1 double-digit win total in the history of the program.
Wow.
Wake, it's not a large number. Carolina, it's a little more, double 10 or more wins, but it's not a lot. Whereas, the Clemsons and Alabamas of the world, they expect to win 10 every single year.
Yeah.
In our neighborhood, man, you might as well throw a parade because it just doesn't happen that often.
Alabama 9-4 last year, like considered probably one of the worst teams in Alabama history in like 25 years, probably. Like
Duke gets 9-4. This is our standard now.
Yes. We are Duke. Seriously, it's a whole different standard going on here. Yeah. And people wonder why could the ACC get the same kind of money the Big Ten and SEC get? Because of that. That's literally why. When I was saying with the top 10 and the top 25, the SEC has 10 teams in the AP top 25 poll. They have 4 teams in the top 10, like to start off the season. So I think the Big Ten has 5 overall in this poll. So that's the thing. And AC has 2 in the entire top 25. So there's a huge gap there. Maybe FSU can turn it around after the disaster they had last year, because that's one of our main brands when it comes to football. And of course, Notre Dame not being in the ACC kind of hurts a lot too. Notre Dame is actually ranked in the top 10 as well. So we'll see how all that goes. But I got to get everybody out of here because it is time for everybody to go back to work. We will see you guys tomorrow. Mark Pruitt from the Winston-Salem Journal will be here. Mount Tabor head coach Tyshawn Brown will be in the house, as well as West Forsyth head coach Kevin Wallace will be in the house as we do our high school football previews. We're the largest provider of high school football in the Triad. We've got you covered there. That all starts next Friday, a week from this Friday. Our first games are the week from this Friday, and we've got 2 big ones. Myself, Rod Funderburg, East Forsyth versus Glenn, the Kernsville Cup. They're doing it week 1 at East Forsyth. So we got that. And then the huge one, Chase Williams and Coach Willamy, they'll be down at Bank of America Stadium for Grimsley versus West Charlotte. That's an 8 o'clock kickoff a week from this Friday in the BOA Kickoff Classic. So we got you covered here. Shout out to David Glenn and Chris Lee for stopping by. We will see you tomorrow for High School Football Wednesdays here on the Desmond Johnson Show.